sustainability needs to be anchored in the strategy. It needs to be in the governance process. It needs to be an investment decision. But I think it's super important that sustainability is also anchored in the business. If the businesses are taking up sustainability, and in principle, you could say sustainability, doesn't stop.
Dirk Voeste is the Chief Sustainability Officer at the Volkswagen Group, where he is leading one of the most ambitious sustainability transformations in the global automotive industry. As Chief Sustainability Officer, Dirk is responsible for embedding sustainability into the core of Volkswagen's corporate strategy as a strategic driver of long-term value creation. Under his leadership, the group launched Regenerate Plus, a strategy that positions Volkswagen's ambition to become a nature and society positive mobility provider as the first building block of its wider corporate strategy.
And nature is suffering from climate change, but nature is the solution to store carbon and have a carbon sink. So there are so many links to nature where businesses have to understand what is the impact on nature.
We won't pinpoint anything in particular, but basically the automotive industry is kind of at the center of some of these geopolitical shifts, thinking about critical minerals, thinking about batteries and trade and industrial policy. How has growing fragmentation in the geopolitical space changed the sustainability conversation inside of Volkswagen over the last 5 years, would you say, or even more so recently?
So the organization's ambition to create a zero impact factories by 2040 is one of the most ambitious industrial sustainability programs globally. As the chief sustainability officer of such an amazing organization, when you look across energy, water, waste, biodiversity, and resource consumption, each dimension have proven the most difficult to transform, and why?
Good question.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode, like we always do, like we always say, of the Sustainability and Climate Podcast. No leave, no transfer. I am Oluwatobi Aigolu, and with me, the one and only, Labake Ajiboye Richards. How you doing, Labake?
Hi everybody. I am good, thank you. I'm very good. I'm very excited and inspired. So it's last week was London Climate Action Week. And so obviously hearing a lot of our sustainability leaders speak, attending some of these events, I feel kind of inspired. I feel like I've connected a little bit to kind of the ecosystem. Yeah, I'm good. Also really busy.
Yes, guys. Yes, for the first time, I saw Labake twice in a week, guys.
Yes.
And also special award is to be given to Labake, putting on blazers all through the London Climate Week with the terrible and hot weather that we experienced in London.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So shout out to you, Labake.
Thank you.
For going through the storm, the weather.
Yes, you wore a blazer as well when I saw you the first time. Yeah,
well,
but
just one act of harmony.
one, yes. But I feel like it's so interesting because the heat wave being the week of London Climate Action Week was actually quite telling. It was almost like a practical application of some of the things that we're talking about, right? It's only going to keep getting hotter. And seeing everybody struggle, and I mean everybody struggle with the weather.
It was really hot. It was really
hot. Yeah. It was really
hot. On Saturday, that I had to even jump into a pool to let you know how hot I was feeling. I couldn't focus and work in my own. I had to work for it was really hot. Hopefully it gets better, but unfortunately, I was told that it's gonna get back hot again because this week is the bit better than last week. That just shows a very strong message, and it was good. London Climate Week was an amazing one. Labake attended a lot of events over the couple of the different events that happened over, and we saw some of the guests that we invited, and their team have not gotten back to us. We had to hold them by the tickets and to remind them that waiting for you guys to get back. So if you're listening to us and you're yet to get back to us, please do that, because it would like to get your insight on the podcast and also for our listeners to also learn and know more about the amazing things that you and your organization are doing to make the world a better place.
Yeah, definitely. So it was good. It was good for that. Other than that, we're excited for the week, for the month. I feel like it's crazy that we're halfway through the year, or more than halfway through the year. We're on the second half of the year.
Yeah.
I actually feel like a scratch record at this point because I keep saying the same things. Time is moving so fast, the weather's changing, but it's all really true things. Anyway, but yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited about this second half of the year. More because of the incredible guests that we'll be bringing on the podcast as well. So you guys should stay tuned. And also we caught up with one of our previous guests on the podcast over the weekend. Shout out to Charlotte Magayi for the amazing work that she's doing. And also our daughter, you see, it's good to see your parent like being proud of the things that you do. And over as well met up with Charlotte, she told us of the book our 16-year-old daughter published, which I started reading it, and it's a book, a poem kind of thing.
It's a collection of poems.
Exactly, thank you. I didn't school in Geneva. So from collection of poems that she put together, and so yeah, I'm excited about what will come out of that. And also when the book is out, everyone should please check it out. It's called A Drum of the Seat by Amoni Wixie. I hope I got that right. Yeah. Big shout out to Charlotte and her daughter. So, Labake, what have you been up to before I say what I want to say?
I have been working really hard on the magazine. Our new issue is coming out today. As this episode goes live, it would be out already. So visit the website, www.arinitiative.org/magazine. It's our 7th issue. It's our energy issue. And we're having conversations around Africa's strategic positioning in building energy security globally. We're talking about resources and opportunities that African countries can leverage to improve energy security on the continent, and just really exciting conversations about energy security, availability, and affordability on the continent. So go check it out. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. Funny enough, that was what I was about to say, because I was like, if Malake does not say it, I will say it. But yes, guys, check out the magazine. The link will be dropped in the show notes. Please check it out. Read, subscribe. Is it? Subscribe.
Yes, so subscribe.
And share as well. And share your comments, share your thoughts on the episode. On the issue. Yes. Yeah. It's obvious, those who were to Nassau and those who were to Geneva. But anyways, today on the podcast, we have an incredible guest. I don't know, I need to a better word. I'll be using incredible.
Exciting.
Exactly. Exciting guest. Again, went to Geneva. We have an exciting guest on the podcast today, so you guys should stay tuned. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm excited about this conversation, and I'm sure it's going to be an exciting conversation. So sit back, guys, and enjoy as we invite our guests on the podcast.
Dirk Voeste is the Chief Sustainability Officer at the Volkswagen Group, where he is leading one of the most ambitious sustainability transformations in the global automotive industry. As Chief Sustainability Officer, Dirk is responsible for embedding sustainability into the core of Volkswagen's corporate strategy as a strategic driver of long-term value creation. Under his leadership, the group launched Regenerate Plus, a strategy that positions Volkswagen's ambition to become a nature and society positive mobility provider as the first building block of its wider corporate strategy. He also oversees initiatives such as the Volkswagen Zero Impact Factory program, which aims to reduce the environmental footprint of production across the group's global manufacturing network, while accelerating progress towards circularity, resource efficiency, and climate neutrality. His perspective is particularly unique because of his scientific background. Before entering the corporate world, he trained as a biologist and worked in space science, studying complex natural systems and the limits of our planet's resources. That systems thinking approach continues to shape how he views industrial transformation today, recognizing that sustainability is not just about reducing emissions, but also about redesigning how businesses operate within planetary boundaries. Throughout his career at Volkswagen, Dirk has championed the integration of sustainability into product development, manufacturing, supply chains, and corporate governance, helping to steer one of the world's largest industrial organizations through an era of profound technological, environmental, and geopolitical change. Today, we'll explore what it really takes to transform a global automaker at scale, why Volkswagen believes regeneration should define the next chapter of corporate sustainability, and how industrial innovation, circularity, and systems thinking can help shape the future of mobility. Dirk, welcome to the Sustainability and Climate Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, guys. As we mentioned, we have an exciting guest. Well, you see, there is a question that is sitting underneath almost every boardroom conversation right now. It is not about how we do less harm, but something far more audacious. How can a company actually create more value than it consumes? How can industry leave the world better than it found it? And that is the question we are going to hold today. And we brought exactly the right person to answer those questions. Welcome on the podcast, Dirk. It's an awesome and privileged to have you on our podcast.
Thank you. Great to be there. Wonderful.
All right. So your background spans across biology, space science discipline that was built around systems thinking, feedback loops, and finite resources. And one thing I've come to understand from my research is that most chief sustainability officers, they come from either the law, the finance, or communication background. Now, how has that scientific lens changed the way you look at what business is actually doing to natural systems?
Yeah, it's really true. Maybe it's not a really straightforward career as a biologist and space scientist to a certain degree, ending up in automotive. But biologists very often, as you mentioned, it can think in systems and feedback loops, which I think sustainability is. And some people may say complicated to a certain degree, but I would rather say it's complex. And if there's complexity, I think you have to just manage various factors. And this is where my education and my work in biology and agricultural botany really helps. And when I worked for space science, I was in charge as a principal investor for a closed equilibrated biological system. So it was in the 90s, most probably now we would say a closed sustainable system. But it's, again, as you described, about infinite resources. You had a small aquarium tank with fish, snails, and plants in it, and you have to see how this ecosystem stays stable over time, with only limited inputs. And I think this drives me towards sustainability, where I'm working on, where my passion is, where I think we all need to do something in order to say, okay, what can we really do? But thinking about, if you look at our planet Earth as a small little aquarium tank, but bigger size, how can we live as people on this planet with the infinite resources in various complex systems in a way? So it helps me, but certainly it's about passion, and it's not only about scientists, but you need to understand business, technology, communication as well. It's a wonderful profession I have.
Awesome.
And before we continue, I just want to commend you and your organization because at your 8th annual sustainability conference this month, you confirmed that the group has reduced Scope 1 and Scope 2 emission by 60% against its 2018 baseline, which basically you're surpassing your 50% target. So I just wanted to say that and say congratulations to you and the team. What an incredible feat. Well done to you and the team.
Yeah, and I think it's super important, and I think when we all work on this, you can make giant leaps, but I think it's a continuous improvement you need to do on all little angles.
Awesome. I love that you kind of started with saying it takes a multidisciplinary approach, this job. So that's great to kind of hear. But I wanted to ask about Volkswagen's regenerate approach or strategy, if you will. And you've positioned it as a foundational pillar for your corporate strategy as opposed to a program that is sitting alongside business. So what would you say led Volkswagen to conclude that incremental sustainability improvements, as you just mentioned with, the report, was no longer sufficient, and why regeneration was kind of the right framework for the next phase of your work at Volkswagen?
It started when you start a strategy process. We started with a small number of people sitting in a room and saying, okay, where are we? What is the landscape? What is the environment? What is the dynamic? And where should we position ourselves? And at that time, it was July, beginning of August. It was the day of the Earth Overshoot Day. And when the Earth Overshoot Day, it means that calculation-wise, the resources of the Earth are already used. And we came to the conclusion that in the team when I said, zero is not good enough. if we just go to zero, we maintain the Earth's overshoot day on the 1st or 2nd of August at that particular day. So we need to start to think about how do we regenerate? How do we restore? And that was a little bit the birth or the hour where we said, can we do more? And where can we do more? Where can we, let's say, move towards positivity for nature, but also for society? Because I think both are in balance, and we just see it more and more these days. You know, if nature is out of balance, society will be out of balance. And if society gets out of balance, nature will be out of balance, and then we are in a downswirl. So this was the idea and the thought and the whole ambition behind Regenerate Plus, where we said, okay, as a group can we do more? And then we set our strategic approach before the group strategy, because Oliver Blume, our CEO, and we discussed it, and he said, no, let's take sustainability at the forefront as a pillar of our group strategy, and also communicate it earlier than the group strategy, because we know when the group strategy is presented, everybody will talk about investments and whatever you do. And at the end, somebody will say, and by the way, do you have a climate change target? And we just did the opposite. We came with Regenerate Plus. We have 4 dimensions: nature, society, business, very normal for sustainability. But we also have our people as a dimension, because with more than 650,000 people worldwide, I think you have to give, and we have to give them a voice and a face and a strategic pillar. So that was the birth of Regenerate Plus, before our group strategy, anchored as a foundation for the group strategy, but certainly with the idea of saying, what can we do? What kind of ambition can we set ourselves to do more than just go to zero? If we make it, I don't know, but we need to try it at least.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
The used parts market in Europe is estimated at 100 billion euros annually, which your team has actually described it as an untapped profit pool. And I think that is what is leading to Volkswagen being open a circular economy hub by the end of 2026. My question is, what is actually blocking circularity from scaling faster? And what changes in a business when materials become assets rather than an input?
Yeah, thanks for the question. But maybe let me just step for a second back to your question, is because, you know, sustainability needs to be anchored in the strategy. It needs to be in the governance process. It needs to be an investment decision. But I think it's super important that sustainability is also anchored in the business. If the businesses are taking up sustainability, and in principle, you could say sustainability, you know, doesn't stop. You know, it was always a risk and opportunities. Risk and opportunities are always balancing out. And certainly, I think sustainability can and will be a business driver. So circular economy is, well, the word economy is already in the wording. The circular economy is one point where you really tangibly see how sustainability, our targets, are anchored in our businesses. And you asked, you know, how is it seen? You know, it starts with the first idea of saying, very often we say recycling means circular economy. That's the end game of circular economy. The first thing is the material which you don't use is the best material, because you don't need to keep it in the circle. And that starts with, how do we design our products? Do we need all the material? Can we make them lighter, for example? And all these kind of topics. So it starts with a design. And then you need to think about, how can I, let's say, have a secondary use of the material? Can I use the batteries, for example, in electromobility? Do they have a second life? Or are there certain parts in the car which can have a second life, which can be refurbished, remanufactured, or revitalized? And then at the end, you look at how much can be really recycled, because recycling always takes up energy, and it's great to keep it in the momentum. And if I'm allowed to, from a European perspective, it is super important from an economic perspective to take circular economy into the business concept, because we are a resource poor country. So we need to let's say, reuse what we have bought. We need to keep it in the ground and in the region. It offers an economic growth perspective. And certainly, very importantly, it creates jobs as well. So it is super important. And then there is a high responsibility on OEMs like Volkswagen, or our group with our 10 brands, is because a car has a size. Well, you can always take one of your mobile phones to recycle it, but then you have 500 grams. If you talk about a car, it has material of a ton, 1 or 2 tons. So you transport completely different masses, which can be used either to recycle or to remanufacture. And this is where sustainability hits our businesses, where there is a business case of reducing our dependency in the supply chain, of reducing our emissions because carbon footprint is lower, but on the other hand, to grow our business, particularly with the used parts business, which is not part of our current business. So we are opening up new profit pools, and then sustainability got really anchored into the business even stronger than it has been before.
Awesome. I love that you started the question or your response about circularity with let's think about design, right? Are we using more resources than we need to? How can we kind of streamline that? I love that that was kind of the first place you started with, because oftentimes circularity focuses on the recycling bit, but you're also saying, let's think about how much we're consuming and how much we're using and putting into our design processes, which is great. And it kind of helps me think about our next question, which is the concept of planetary boundaries, right? It's becoming an increasingly common, influential topic within or concept within the sustainability circles. But still, we see that a lot of businesses are thinking about, the economic constraints, the market constraints, as opposed to the ecological constraints. So how do you think, or in your kind of experience, your knowledge base, how can companies start thinking about or preparing for a future where environmental limits are becoming just as important as the financial ones?
I think that's a good question. I think an excellent thought, and also some transformation which we, I think, have to accelerate. And what you could think of is saying, when do environmental considerations or nature considerations enter the profit and loss statement? And one thing is, it is very difficult to grab always ecological. How do we measure biodiversity? And there are millions of ways to do it. But if it doesn't enter the P&L, it will be, it still is an uphill battle to really get it into the decision mode. So that's why, for example, we embed our environmental assessment into our investment decisions. Or we're looking at our suppliers, for example, and we have more than 60,000 tier 1 suppliers. We're looking them at this, we call it S rating, sustainability rating, to look at their safety, quality, but also at the environmental performance. And when you start this dialogue, you will see that more and more suppliers start to think, okay, if I do this one, it helps me in one or the other way. So let's take a few examples. When you are in a resource scarce area, for example, a dry area, biodiversity plays an important role, because in order, let's say, let's say if there are strong rains, how can we, let's say, diminish flooding at your plants and your assets? Or if you're in certain areas, for example, if you have a plant or a hall where you produce things and you do it in a forest, for example, I'm not saying that you should kill the forest, but just close to trees, you will see that you need 2-3 degrees less cooling in the summer. So there is also an energy business case behind it. And nature is suffering from climate change, but nature is the solution to store carbon and have a carbon sink. So there are so many links to nature where businesses have to understand what is the impact on nature and how it can drive. And that's why, for example, in Regeneration Plus, one of our top KPIs in the nature part is biodiversity, where we're saying it is not only decarbonization, it's not only circular material, as Toby has asked, it is also about how is our impact on nature? How do we, let's say, compensate on nature around our own assets? And if I'm looking, for example, at one of our top plants in Portugal, Palmeira, where we have a tremendous amount of biodiversity, let's say fields and ecological regeneration, restoration areas, just to compensate about it. And we know it is super important in this whole field. So the question, as you said, is how do we bring it into the P&L? And there are attempts. For example, you look at the Value Balancing Alliance, for example, which we're also a member, which is calculating intangible impacts like biodiversity loss, land use rate changes into economics, so that we really, at the end of the day, having a financial figure for it, and we can compare it and really bring it into the profit and loss and into the statements. And I think this is where nature in companies starts, or where companies realize, oh, this is the impact we do have. And that's what we can do to avoid those impacts. And it can be in the supply chain, it can be in your own assets, and nature will become really one of the key decisive factors in the future. However, and as you said, it is currently always seen as a second part. Yeah, we need to take about X, Y, that, but it will be a decisive factor. And if you look at all the supply chains, at one point in time, you're ending somewhere in nature, be it in mining or be it in natural productions, even in renewable material, it's in there.
So we should center nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your organization's ambition to create a zero impact factory by 2040 is one of the most ambitious industrial sustainability programs globally. As the chief sustainability officer of such an amazing organization, when you look across energy, water, waste, biodiversity, and resource consumption, which dimension have proven the most difficult to transform, and why?
Good question. All of them are equally important, and I think what we need to come across is saying there is no kind of soccer league tableau where you say this is the number one and the other one. Depending where your their production is, and Volkswagen has over 110 production sites worldwide. It depends. Sometimes it's biodiversity, sometimes it's water when you're in a water scarce area, sometimes it's waste. And our initiative, which you quoted, asked for how can we mitigate our impact on those effects. And if you just look what we did since 2010, we reduced our emissions, CO2 emissions by over 70%, waste and waste and water by over 80% per vehicle produced. So it is really working. But very importantly, and when you talk to other production guys, the first part is to understand what are the key drivers which need to be impacted. And depending where you are, it is different. So if you're in a water scarce area, water is the key issue. If you don't have enough water, you can't let the coating, for example, running in this regard. If you have, let's say, an area where you don't want to have waste or production processes where the economy or others could kick in, waste could be a parameter. You need to work on all of them. But I think, again, your question on the biologist, you need to understand in the complexity which one in your locations are the driving factors, and then you have to put in the effort to do that. But I think overall the initiative, it's a global initiative. It works pretty well, and seeing the progress, it is great for the environment, but also less CO2 means less energy use. So we have a cost factor in. It is always linking in the economic part as well, to see where are we going and what do we drive.
Awesome. And so let's talk about current affairs a little bit. Geopolitical shifts that are currently happening, and we won't pinpoint anything in particular, but basically the automotive industry is kind of at the center of some of these geopolitical shifts, thinking about critical minerals, thinking about batteries and trade and industrial policy. How has growing fragmentation in the geopolitical space changed the sustainability conversation inside of Volkswagen over the last 5 years, would you say, or even more so recently?
Yeah, and I think this kind of uncertainty, which is linked to it, I think has changed the debate in a lot of companies and a lot of governments, and it's also in our group as well. And for example, you see it with our China for China strategy, for example, where we said, okay, we need to be faster, we need to adapt to what is really in the market and grow for this one. But it also adds to saying is, are our supply chains secure? And depending on how you define sustainability, and to you in your moderation, you said it's about value creation, and that's the main driver for sustainability. But you could also argue with the definition of offering, saying, you need to have long-term business success. So business continuity is a really huge part in sustainability. And this is about, for example, securing supply chains. In a way, it makes them secure. And it can be nature, as we just said a few minutes ago, that the mines and the supply chain can deliver. But it also is, an area when you look at circular economy again, saying, do we need to buy all the material all the time, or can we use the material which is available in a certain region, let's take Europe or whatever. So those have changed. When you look at recyclability, when you look at battery circular loops, and the others. And we are questioning ourselves is, how can we be more resilient in terms of supply chain? But we're also asking ourselves, how can we be more adaptive to certain uncertainties which are happening? And this is, for example, the China for China's strategy, where we say, when you are much closer in an area, you can be much more adaptive because you can react much quicker to certain changes. So sustainability is in all those discussions, and sustainability is part of the investment decisions to make us more resilient. It is part of initiatives, for example, to drive a circular economy. And it is, when you look at the Zero Impact Factory initiative, it is also to reduce our dependency on energy and less waste. And less waste means you're using your material more intensive, and you most probably need less per car. And that's, I think, the driving factors as well. And as you said, and most probably it is not finished yet. It will continue.
Certainly.
This way.
Certainly.
One conversation that is on the lips of everybody now is AI.
Yeah.
And I know it is very important to your organization, because even at the forum, there was a session on AI and sustainability reporting, and AI is already inside the organization's sustainability architecture. And we also see that AI is becoming embedded across different sectors, manufacturing, looking at logistics, design, supply chain, and the likes. And one thing that is also very important that people talk about is the data centers, because data centers could account for nearly 9% of electricity demand by 2035. And I strongly believe that there's a real risk here in terms of AI optimizing the flow systems and the like. Right? Where do you sit on that tension in terms of how is the organization using AI to go deeper?
Before I answer this, let me expand your question, if I'm allowed to do into it. Was very much on the business and the environment part. But AI has also a strong part on us as a society and our coworkers, which is very often, I would say very often forgotten. But currently we are in a process, and that's why when you look at Regenerate Plus, we have this 4 dimension, our people. And we are currently moving our people worldwide from a combustion engine into an electromobility world, which has some uncertainty. And we're also moving them from an analog into a digital, into an AI-driven world, which is also, you need different capacities. People are also afraid, what is about my job in the future? We need to learn topics. So it isn't a sustainability. It offers risk and opportunities at the same time. So beside the questions you raised, the societal and the people part also needs to be factored in one or the other way, which I think is, I wouldn't say it's forgotten, but I think it is, again, the balance between nature and society. And when you look at the topics you've raised, we are using AI in our production. We're using it already in supply chain. You can, if you buy one of the ID family cars, you will find that AI is already in the car and helping you. You can talk to an AI prompt to get those topics. When you look at in the future, how do we optimize, the way you're driving the road, because it has to do something with how many energy or petrol do I need. In all areas, AI will have an impact on improving the efficiency of it. I think we need to make sure that it also improves the effectiveness. Efficiency is one part, but normally before you get more efficient, you need to be more effective. And this is also where AI plays an important role. And we will see more and more that AI will play a role in sustainability, as I mentioned, but also in the area of reporting, energy gathering, etc. So AI will be an incremental and fundamental part in all areas to be more efficient in what we do, but even more of being also more effective in what we do. And here again, the human part plays in. You still need the competences and the know-how to, let's say, digest and also somewhat balance the suggestions coming out of any AI prompt you're using. So you're absolutely right. And of course, and here again, everything comes with a cost. And the cost, for example, as you said, is much higher energy. So on one side, you're optimizing, let's say, a production plant of reducing energy input. And on the other hand of the balance, as you described, we have all these huge data centers and to put it in one or the other location. It needs to be a fair balance. And when we look at our decarbonization pathway, it certainly is factored in and will be factored in. But AI is the way we deploy this technology. Meanwhile, worldwide, it is unavoidable in a way. And we used to always have to use it in a way saying, what are the benefits I'm getting out and what are the costs? And how do we, let's say, find the right balance between all those factors?
Completely. I think that's one of the big questions of our generation or of our age, we should say. How do we balance, the effectiveness of AI and, the cost of it, which, it's an interesting question to ask across all sectors and all industries.
And by the way, it is one of the
Yes.
technology which has, I think the technology, at least I can recall, has the fastest deployment of all time. Yeah. When you look at other technologies, it sometimes takes decades. Well, just take as a transformation into electromobility. And this one is deployed in, I don't know, it feels like milliseconds.
Yes, it genuinely does. And across generations, I feel like things like, electric vehicles, things like even the internet, if you will, some older generations took a while to kind of get adopted, if you will. But I feel like AI, especially ChatGPT, everybody's got it on their phones. Everybody's integrated it into conversation and everyday life. The other day I saw someone say, oh, I'll ask ChatGPT as opposed to I'll ask Google, which is such an interesting shift in how it's integrated, in daily life.
But I can tell you, we just maybe as a fun fact of private, we also planned our next vacation with AI. Interesting enough, some flights didn't exist, but anyway, so
so there are still some gaps that it needs to catch up on. That's a good one. Google should do an ad like that, something along those lines. But to kind of round up this, really generous conversation, one of the underappreciated challenges of sustainability is organizational change. And I wanted to ask, being that Volkswagen, you've mentioned in this conversation, you have over 650,000 people across the world. How do you align these employees, these 650,000 employees, around a vision, regenerative vision, for example, when a lot of people are kind of focused on their immediate commercial and operational priorities? And, what can global CSOs pick up from some of the strategies and the methods that you've tried and have worked?
In 650,000 people, if you call randomly, would call a few people would say, yeah, I know Regenerate Plus, of course, it's our sustainability strategy. And some you would call saying, I haven't heard about it. So it's really, do we get all of them at the same? No, it is super difficult. The way we set up Regenerate Plus is, it works for all the brands. And then the brand like Audi, Volkswagen, Skoda, Seat, and the like, they also used Regenerate to translate that into their strategies because they have different ways how they differentiate in the market. They also are, let's say, more active in one or the other region. So you need to translate it into their things. We have 12 KPIs. All brands have to deliver and support those 12 KPIs, and they're measured against it. So we also have anchored it into our board remuneration. So it is really anchored into processes. It's anchored into investment decisions. So whenever people come across, we want to buy something or we want to do this one, they come across sustainability. So it's a permanent process saying, yeah, it's part of the process. We need to think about it. What really it helps a lot is talking, and repeating and telling the story and make it really tangible. So, for example, I do quite a number of, town halls, which is now easy because we're just using Zoom or Teams. And you can dial in a couple of thousand people globally to say, where are we with Regenerate Plus? What is our progress report every year? What are examples? And the feedback is very often that they say, oh, I have a cool idea. Can I do it? And we have what we call internally, we call it fund. It's not really a fund, but it's money available, up to 20 million a year, which we can use for employees to use it for sustainability project within Volkswagen or the Volkswagen company or the Volkswagen countries or where we are active inside, or but also with externals. So there is project available, and people will start to talk about it. Hey, look, this is my project. We had in South Africa biodiversity projects, for example, or we had a project in Czech, for example, where we educated people. So there's a permanent communication around it. There are permanent examples around it, so people talk about it in their shift. We do advertisements, for example, one of the great ones. It wasn't my idea, but it was a wonderful idea, and maybe because it wasn't mine, it was really cool. One of the colleagues translated Regenerate Plus in taking pictures of employees in their day-to-day shift, how this contributes to sustainability, and then it becomes tangible. And everyone says, "Oh, this is what sustainability is about. Oh, I'm doing this myself," and then you get really anchored to it. But it's a permanent communication process. Take tangible examples. And what makes me personally super proud is that those small little examples, which are coming from our employees, adds up to something really big, and that will stay. And this is, I think, when sustainability really gets anchored and really driven in organization, certainly with a magnitude of Volkswagen Group, you can't reach everybody at the same time. That's why talking about it and taking to the forefront and demonstrate it, it's a business driver, but it's also a business imperative. It's an attitude we have, and I think sustainability here is strongly anchored in those processes. And that's what I recommend to other CSOs as well. Saying, take it into the governance structure, try to make it remuneration relevant for board members. That helps significantly, and make it tangible and make the business case. And that's definitely something which I feel is a success factor. And if I could add one more, is come with a tool, not a stick. If you offer a tool, if you offer a solution, rather than, but this is what we need to do and this is what the board wants, you get exactly what the board wants and nothing more. If you come with a solution and people say, "Oh, this makes sense. Yeah, it's true. I can save this one, and this is what it helps me to retain our employees," you will see immediately you get much more than just come with a stick. So come with a tool and not a stick.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love the 3 points of, you need to be able to translate it, you need to be able to anchor it into your system and your processes, and you need to be able to communicate it. So I love that. I hope they've picked it up.
It would certainly be, if not everybody, but I think it depends also on the company culture. But again, finding a solution, and don't be dogmatic. Come with a solution, offer a solution, and sometimes step to the side is the right recipe for success than rather banging your head against the wall and knocked out. Yeah,
completely agree with that. Thank you so much. Toby likes this part of the podcast, and I'll let him.
But thank you so much. But before we let you go, we do something on this podcast that we believe in deeply, where we give people their flowers while they can still smell them. And today we have a lot of flowers to give to you guys. And I want you to hear this not as a formality or as a closing ritual that we do this podcast, but because I believe that the people who come on this podcast they often carry enormous responsibility in near silence, and we think that they deserve to be said out loud. And I'm going to quickly read 3 quotes from 3 incredible people about what they said about you. And the first one is from the founding director of the United Nations Global Impact, President of George Hell. And he said, "Sustainability as a strategic objective is firmly entrenched in the Volkswagen Group. What matters now is the speed of the transformation to remain successful." Another senior sustainability leader at Audi said this after the forum in Berlin, and he said, "Attending the forum was truly inspiring, especially at the time when sustainability is increasingly challenged by geopolitical and economic uncertainties. Many thanks to Dirk and the Volkswagen Group stakeholder team for organizing such a high-quality forum." And to my favorite quote, which was said by you when you joined the group, and you said, "As part of the boomer generation, I feel a responsibility to give back, to help address the instances we have contributed to. My children have challenged me on that, and they are right. Climate change is not waiting." You see, here is what I want to say to you, and I mean it in every sense of the way. You did not have to do this. You were a biologist who ran space experiments for NASA, a scientist who spent years in agricultural chemistry and biotechnology, because looking at this, you had other parts. You had a very quiet one. But when the moment came, you chose the added role. You stepped into one of the most complex industrial organization on earth, and you said, we can do better. You said we can be a company that gives back more than it takes. And then you got to work. You see, what makes you remarkable is not the strategy, but the things that you've done. What makes you remarkable is that quote about your children, that they challenged you. And the important thing is you listen, because sometimes most parents will not. And that is not a corporate answer. That is a human word. And for me, it tells everything about why the numbers at the group are actually moving. Because at the very top of the sustainability function sits a man who is not doing this for the quarterly report, but is doing it because he understands that the planet his children inherit is a moral question, not a metrics question. You see, you chose a former soup factory for in Berlin for your forum. There was no press around it. There was no announcement. There was no protocol. And just people in the room who are doing the honest work. Even though it pained me that I didn't know about it, I would have loved to attend. Because I got to understand that you took the elevator out of service and made everyone climb the steps. You see, that detail, when I saw it, stayed with me because it says something about who you are. You do not want the room to be comfortable. You want it to be real. And there's this, something you said, which I will leave with everyone listening to this podcast. You said, I've seen a lot of very good individual sustainability initiatives, but they tend to be isolated trees, not a whole forest. That what you're growing at the group is the forest. And today, among the 100 countries where this podcast has been listened to, and the hundreds of thousands of listeners who tend to hear this episode, on behalf of myself and Labake, who has made me the official spokesperson of this podcast, I want to say a very big thank you for the amazing work that you're doing. Because you see, this industry needs people like you to be a force for good. And I want you to know that we are rooting for you. And I want to say, keep going, because truly, truly, the world needs the forests. And on behalf of myself, Labake, and the millions of people, thank you so much for the work that you do. And I want you to know that I will keep looking forward to more reports from the group and keep carrying you on for the amazing work that you do. So thank you so much, Dirk.
Thank you very much. I'm flattered, and we need more forests.
Yes, we need more
Yes.
forests. We need more forests.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dirk, for your generous knowledge that you shared through the conversation. We are very excited for the work that you're doing over at Volkswagen. And we would love to kind of come back on the podcast and share more about, your wins, some of the challenges, and how you're kind of solving the problem and presenting solutions for others to emulate. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, with great pleasure. And whenever, I'm more than happy to come report on challenges and opportunities, and wins, and they're even much better if there are challenges you overcome. And something, again, for your very, very kind words, is it's also about the people. You never do it alone. It is always a team behind it, passionate, doing all the work, sometimes silently, sometimes in the forefront. And that is, for me, one of the, beside my kids and what I do, is the greatest pleasure to work with a team, really being excited and doing the work. So thanks also for your time.
Awesome.